Good evening, spiritual warriors. Welcome to Spiritual Warriorship, where we study, read, discuss, grow in consciousness, the books of His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Swami. We've taken something from the five of the six spiritual warriors. And this evening we're continuing with Spiritual Warrior 3, Chapter 8, How to Strengthen Ourselves. And I was guided to this chapter after we finished the chapter on how a spiritual warrior views the world. And when we get all of this, it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? How's this going to happen? I want that, but it's not working. Or I don't know how to go at it. And Bhaktitirtha Swami, he puts in our face what may be a challenge, or what may be obstacle, whatever, spells it out very nicely, and then he tells us what to do, gives us the tools and technologies. So let's look at his definition of spiritual warrior. Every now and then I like to come back to this, hoping that those of you out there have been following the spiritual warriorship program and concept. I'm hoping you're getting the books. I told you that Harinam Press, the publishers, now have a website, harinamapress.org. And there you can see all the books, you can see the contents of each book, you can even read an excerpt from the book. And if it's still on, you can get a free poster of the 12 qualities of a spiritual warrior, which I feel they're very important for our spiritual growth, because that's why we're here. So what does he tell us about a true spiritual warrior? Excuse me. That a true spiritual warrior strives to master weapons. And what are those weapons? Love, humility, compassion, faith, and self-knowledge. Self-knowledge is the key. We must know who we are. And our battleground is in consciousness. Because until the consciousness is changed and clear, then we're just what I call bum-fumbling around. And what do we wage war against as spiritual warriors? We wage war against the ignorance and the lust that's pervading our society today. And as spiritual warriors, what is our objective? Our objective is a place, a civilization where people live to help each other and live in harmony with each other and with God. So we've got quite a mantle on us as spiritual warriors. But as we get to that point, we're awakened and in tune with the spiritual environment that is available for us. So what we do, we endeavor to develop ourselves, and we'll touch on that tonight, and share our understanding with others. And why do we do that? Because we want to give them the tools so that they can discover and experience who they really are and the truth of themselves. So with that reminder, let's see, a little slight review, where did we go? He reminds us that spiritual life is challenging. And I'm sure that's not new to any of you out there on this spiritual path. He tells us that it's not an easy one. But he then tells us once we have made a commitment, all sorts of difficult challenges arise for us. But the challenges are qualifying tests, right? There's a reason for everything. We've been through that with so much we've covered. And as I say sometimes, I wish I had a photographic mind, brain, so I could bring it back. But if you all have been listening and maybe taking notes, or if you have the books, this will be true. But the challenges serve as qualifying tests. Why? To see if we are serious. You know, if you're dating someone and eventually you may say, you want to marry, or let's get married, then you have to be serious about that. And once you make the commitment, then you start the process towards following through on that commitment. So we are challenged by tests to see if we're really serious once we say we're on a spiritual path and we want to gain self-knowledge. And this way we can really set up about thinking of entering the spiritual kingdom and connecting with the Supreme, who we are part and parcel of. So it's like going to school. When you're in school, you have to take tests to move from one grade to another, one school to another. And it doesn't mean that the teacher wants to defeat you. The teacher wants to know if you grasp the information that you've been studying and have absorbed it enough to give it back or even to apply it. So ultimately, we learn from our test results what we understand and what we need to study. This is like school. So we touched on that just to remind you. He tells us that the opportunity for evaluation is always available to us if you are serious about your spiritual life. So if we're not serious about spiritual life, tests and obstacles will curtail our advancement. And why would we not be in a path if we didn't want to advance and move ahead? Now, each time we pass a test, our qualifications increase. And where are we? We're one step closer to becoming our natural spiritual selves. And he constantly reminds us of that if we're listening and reading who we are, eternal beings, spiritual beings. What is that sentence I have? We are, he said, are fundamentally spiritual, transcendental, non-material entities. In a physical body, using the spiritual body as a vehicle. So I like that phrase, but he's always reminding us that we're more than these bodies. So a true spiritual warrior sees each test as a blessing. Hey there, if you're going through some challenges, kind of stop rather than feeling, why is this happening to me? Oh, I can't take this. No. See it as a blessing because it is a chance to mature spiritually and move closer to God. Okay? So don't walk away from challenges and tests. Face them. Now, when we recognize that each test or challenge as a positive event, we approach it with zeal and enthusiasm. What you say? What you're going through now, how can I face it with zeal and enthusiasm? Just make a shift in your consciousness that this is something positive to help me to grow because I really want to know God. I want to get closer to God. Okay, I want to be my true spiritual self. That's what he's saying here. So, once you have done that and accepted that with zeal and enthusiasm, you'll know that you're engaged in consciousness raising. Each test is a chance to prove that we are focused and sincere about becoming spiritual beings. And that's our true identity. So we had looked at that. We had looked at great teachers who were tested, St. Teresa of Avila and St. Francis of Assisi, St. Thomas Aquinas, and he even reminded us of the temptations and tests that Jesus went through when he was out there in that Buddha. Now, we also looked at working on our own consciousness. Now this is important. Even if you have a job and you have something, you are assigned a project or something, as you move along in that and learn, get the tools for it or what have you, you have to use your intelligence and your knowledge to put this project together. Now, in spiritual life, you can get help from mentors and all, but if you're sincere, he tells us that we must first work on our own consciousness. You know, it's like you really can't tell somebody where to go if they're asking for directions unless you've been there yourself. And you know, of course, on the road sometimes people will tell you, oh, down there, down. But truly, you need to have had the experience of going there so that you can give it. So he tells us that if you're sincere to raise others' consciousness, then you must first get your own act together. And by what? How? By strengthening your own consciousness. Because if not, you're likely to endanger people and lead them to a destructive place. So you have to, what does he call it? Walk your talk. So when we engage in consciousness raising activities, what happens too, we put pressure on the environment that we're in. But isn't that what it's about? Because you want others to change their consciousness. And sometimes people are very resistant to change. So you have to have gone through the process to bring your consciousness to a higher level so that you can help others. You want a scissor?
Tape.
Excuse me, my technician. Did you find it? Excuse me. This is important. Everything is important. It was just here. Excuse me. Think about those thoughts. Hare Krishna. All things. This is wonderful about working from the house. What was the last thing I said? Okay, we're talking about working on our own consciousness. And if we're serious and sincere about raising others' consciousness, we have to definitely raise our own. So what do we need to do? We're studying, you're reading Bhagavad Gita prayerfully, and Srimad Bhagavatam, you're hearing. But you have to imbibe and embody what you're getting. Because again, you're going to help, you're getting it, help yourself and then help others. So once you embody that information, then you can offer it to others and see. And that's what he calls walk our talk. And gain power that is truly honorable and enduring. Okay? So we looked at that, and we also looked at how to weed out saboteurs of devotion And this is an important structure he puts. And I like, if you're noticing, he continues using a spiritual warrior must, or as a spiritual warrior. So that's a wonderful acceptance of us as having studied, read, embodying, imbibing, and practicing in our everyday life, so that we become that spiritual warrior using the weapons of love and humility and faith and knowledge that we just stated at the beginning. Because as I've read, Prabhupada even talks about Krishna consciousness being a gradual process. And this is, but it means hearing. It means imbibing it, embodying it, and then practicing it in your everyday life. And I think I've asked a number of times, and it's okay if you don't, that those of you who are fairly, or steady, or occasional, if you hear something strikes you, because sometimes the soul is just waiting for one phrase to say, yeah, let's go to work on that, let's do that, let's become that. And you've done that, and you've seen changes occurring in your environment and in your life, and you're using it in a practical way, to let me know. I'd like to hear. So, as my guru used to say, Bhakti Tirtha Swami, I'm not here to entertain you. I'm here to offer you something that can bring about change in your life for higher consciousness. Now he tells us that an impartial, investigative attitude is a vital tool for all spiritual warriors. Got that? An impartial, investigative attitude is a vital tool for all spiritual warriors. Why? Because subtle interferences can arise at any moment to pull us away from the path of right action. And I'm sure those of us on the spiritual path may have noticed we seem to be doing well. We're hearing on a regular basis, and we're chanting, if we're doing chanting mantras, doing our chanting and associating with other spiritual people. And then at some point, you may not even be mindful. He tells you how we must be vigilant. You find yourself talking with somebody who's not quite at your level, and it may be, where did he come from? But he may be throwing out something, and you're agreeing, because don't forget, the mind carries all the stuff from the past and whatever's out there. And if you're not careful, you may find yourself, well, I won't read today. I'll get that tomorrow. And, I won't get to my rounds today, but I'll catch up tomorrow. Be vigilant. Because what he says is, this investigative attitude enables us to see the patterns of the mind clearly and weed out destructive thoughts. I always, when he mentions the mind, want to go back to 12 qualities of a spiritual master. And the first one is mastery of the mind. We must be vigilant. He tells us to make sure, and we are the only ones that can weed out destructive thoughts, feelings, and behavior. And that way we can serve those around us better. We're not caught up in that or tangled in those weeds. Now, this is not a task that's accomplished once and then forgotten, because that mind is constantly working, isn't it? We must exercise constant vigilance to keep our mind free from self-centered preoccupation and be available for service. So he tells us one of the most venomous weeds to take root in the heart of a spiritual warrior is attachment to name and fame. If we have a strong desire to distinguish ourselves from the crowd, to be better than others, or to be noticed and appreciated, we're not acting in a selfless way. And our so-called service is actually self-grandizement and a means for feeling important. And that means you taking your self-sights off the center, Krishna in the heart, Krishna in everybody, and you want to be known. That's not healthy. This again takes me back. 12 qualities. The spiritual warrior. The second quality is humility. Then you're not looking, you don't want to pat on the back all the time and name and fame. And I just remembered, if you're new to this spiritual warriorship, or you weren't here from the beginning, or even if you were, the 12 qualities were the chapter, was the chapter I began the spiritual warriorship back in November 2008, because November 2009 was 1 year. But all of those back broadcasts are in the archives on Krishna.com. You go to Krishna.com TV and then check Spiritual Warriorship, and then they'll all come up and you can hear about the 12 qualities. Very important. So what is he telling us here? He gives us another dangerous saboteur is envy. Now we looked at one is what? Wanting attachment to name and fame. The next is envy. And what is envy? It's the total opposite of love and selflessness. Envy interferes with our ability to see and hear truthfully, and distorts our perception to such an extent that our behavior can become extremely damaging to others and ourselves. So we cannot understand spiritual realities by scholarship alone. Although study is important, the path to spiritual realization is through dedicated, selfless service. Now, as we offer service to others with no expectations of reward, the Lord in the heart becomes more available. And what does he do? He provides for our needs. So we don't have to snatch down and envy and be malicious and all like that. As we serve, he provides for our needs. And why? Because we have removed the veils that hide the truth of who we really are. So tonight, we're on what's called self-protection, he tells us, as spiritual warriors. He says that as we purify our own consciousness, now we just talked about weeding out the subtle things there and of working on our own consciousness. And as we purify our consciousness and become more effective spiritual warriors, just keep that. You notice he's reminding us, let that thought bombarding your mind and consciousness. I'm a spiritual warrior. You see, I got my shirt on tonight to remind me that I'm endeavoring to be a strong spiritual warrior, and hopefully you all are following along. But we must keep in mind that we are in a wartime situation. Now, to fight effectively, what happens? Soldiers must know how to protect themselves. The art of self-protection is an essential component of our inner work and our endeavor to serve our others. So instead of being naive and we must see circumstances as they are in order to improve our resistance to negative influences. Because he reminds us, he gives the example that when we're on an airplane, at takeoff, you know what happened. Flight attendants comes out with the oxygen hanging down and the thing, and calls your attention and tells you how to use the oxygen mask, and the seat floater under the seat gives you. But what do they tell you about that? You're reminded that you have to secure your own mask before assisting others. So you must protect yourself so that you can help others. Now, in the same way, to be effective spiritual warriors, we must protect ourselves first. Otherwise, we are of no use to anyone. The greatest protection of all comes from our unconditional, unmotivated, uninterrupted devotional service. And what happens? That devotional service opens us up to a flow of divine love and protection in all circumstances. I wanted to bring that back to the part here. Oh, we just said that as we offer services to others with no expectation of reward, the Lord in the heart, he's reminding us where the Lord is. The Lord in the heart becomes more available to us and provides for our needs, right? And here he's telling us, if we're serving the Lord, serving others, unconditionally, unmotivatedly, uninterrupted, it opens us to a flow of divine love and protection in all circumstances. So the Lord is always there for us. Another quality is fearlessness. A spiritual warrior is never fearful, he tells us. Why? Because we know we're backed up by the Supreme. So as we keep going, as he keeps telling us, reminding us, things begin to click in. At least they are for me. And I hope they are for you, have been following the spiritual warriorship. And if you can get any of these books so you can follow along, you can become the strong spiritual warriors. Now he tells us that our minds are extremely vulnerable to influences from the media and the electronic devices that surround us. Now, that's no new news, right? It's a mess out there. And yet, some of it is good. What happened? That the whole situation worked out really nice through the technology. I don't remember the sequence, but I was quite happy for that particular technological. But self-protection for spiritual warriors involves being vigilant about the mind at all times. Huh? Remember, we said that mind will bring in destructive thoughts and feelings and behavior, but we don't want to be a servant to that. So we have to protect ourselves. And how do we do that? By being vigilant about that mind at all times. He suggests doing, in doing that, to minimize television viewing. Hello? You spiritual warriors, you aren't into hours of TV, I'm sure of that, but we have to be careful because we get settled in front of that TV and our minds, he tells us somewhere, goes into a certain state and we just absorb. And then when you're up in some behavior, where did that come from? So you must, he's suggesting, minimize television watching. Excess computer work, he says, huh? And any habits that lead to passivity, inertia, and mental absenteeism. We must also immunize ourselves against mob mentality, he calls it, and degraded mass consciousness by including processes of purification as a regular part of our lives. And I think we've been through this, hearing, chanting, associating with other spiritual people, and keeping the mind clear and not letting it control you. He tells us as spiritual warriors, we must not forget the help we are constantly receiving from higher beings in this universe. At the same time, we must be aware of the tremendous influx of lower beings who are attempting to neutralize us by polluting our minds and hearts. Being mindful, there's a mindfulness, I don't know if it's a meditation or a chapter in one of the books. Maybe I'll look for that so we can get more of this nectar to lift ourselves to this level of consciousness. He reminds us that harmful entities are always on the prowl for new victims and are continually seeking out ways to direct us towards darkness. But when we know that the Lord, as he says, the Lord is in our hearts, and that by serving him, the divine, the love from him flows and protects us. Now, are there any questions, comments, or anything you want to hear again? Sometimes I feel it's just, I call it my cup runneth over, because he gives us so much to help us in our spiritual lives. And if you notice, he keeps calling us already spiritual warriors. Not like, oh, I don't know if I can be that. He's accepting that you are, but also giving you the tools, technologies to become stronger. Are there any questions, comments?
Yes.
Can I ask who's out there?
Bhakti Carol, Manjesh, Messenger, and Bhuvan Mohan.
Eddie Boo, welcome. Who's Messenger? Where is Messenger located, if you don't mind my asking? Is this your first time? I'm sorry, I'm not running from the question. I'll get it. I'd just like to know who's out there. As I've said many times, I like
He's from Ontario, Canada.
Ontario, Canada. Messenger. Is that where Majesh is also? Because I know he's in Canada. We're getting to be a real family here, though. I'd just like to ask a question or two. Are they in the same place?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you, Majesh, for bringing in a friend. Okay, what's the question?
How do we awaken and be aware of the spiritual environment around us?
How do you awaken and become aware of the spiritual environment around you?
Mm-hmm.
if you are desiring what I think we touched on that. You become aware of the spiritual environment and energy around you. If you are finding yourself thinking about things on a higher level, thinking about God, discussing God, thinking of helping others, caring for others, wanting change in the whole world, if you will, in your community, in your home. If you're reading spiritual material and you're talking about that material that you've read, and you're feeling a sense of helpfulness, and he uses the word joy, if you're connecting with other spirit souls and God. If you're not in an environment that's spiritual, you'll know, because you won't feel so good. And if you're in there and think, well, for satisfying your senses, that's so temporary that you really, it's not helpful at all. But you bring to the environment what's in your consciousness. That's why this whole section on that we just went over, of working on your own consciousness, knowing who you are as a spiritual being, knowing your connection with God, living your life at the highest level of consciousness that you're able at this time. And as you do that, you will be directed to environments and people that'll protect you. We just said that the Lord will do that for you. Does that help? Who asked that question?
Messenger.
Messenger. Is that okay, or you?
Yes.
Yeah?
Very.
And see, what we're getting here is you're hearing, you're being fed and given wonderful tools. As he says, you need to embody it, apply it in your everyday life. As I've said before, if you hear one sentence or phrase for raising consciousness, for being selfless, for being more loving, for helping others, write it down. Feel it in your heart. Yes, that's how I'd like to be. That's how I'd like to treat people. And that starts to take hold. And as you feed that to the mind that's saying, oh, you're worthless, you're nothing, oh, you're whatever, that mind can throw some stuff out. But that's like we talked about weeding, getting out those weeds that are trying to settle in there. And you just let it know, that mind, no, I'm going to begin practicing being more caring today. I'm going to be more vigilant with you. You're not going to bring in junk on me today. You see, you are can control that mind. And as you do that, you clear out the way so that the Lord in the heart can guide you to a place where people are, or to someone of a higher level. If you're a devotee and you're wearing neck beads, here in Alachua it's so fascinating. Almost every store you go and you'll hear, hey, Haribo. And you may not know them, but they see the neck beads, you know, or you got your bead bag. I forgot where I was walking one time with my bead, but I don't leave home without my bead bag. And wherever I am, if there's a quiet moment, I'm waiting for something, I keep chanting. And somebody said, oh, you're Hare Krishna. Yes, Haribo, or Hare Krishna, or something, you know. So if you keep that, the mind finally gets the message, she's going to talk about Krishna. I can't get in there with this junk. Okay? So you can control that, but you have to apply it every day. Okay? Any other questions?
If we're too weak, will Krishna still give us tests? Wouldn't he... Wouldn't he just protect our spiritual life at all times?
If we're too weak?
Yeah.
What do you mean by too weak?
Or if he knows we're insignificant, that is.
He doesn't know you're insignificant. He knows you're his part and parcel. He knows he loves you. He knows he wants you to come back to the spiritual world. He knows that you are an eternal living being. He knows you're eternal. You have knowledge. You have bliss within you. He knows that. That's why he gives you the qualifying test we spoke about when I first started. To see if you're serious. If you're serious about knowing him, he will take care of you and protect you, but he has to be sure you're serious, so you're going to get a challenge. And rather than walking away and said, oh, there's no God, what happened to Krishna, he let me down, it's no, oh Krishna, you brought me this challenge, this test, I don't know if I can go through this, but I know you're there to help me, guide me. Then you take a step or an action. You're never too weak. Krishna, you're his part and parcel. All he wants is you to turn to him and call his name and cry out to him and make an effort to please him and to please others. And then you'll feel, that's why the spiritual warriorship is so, I feel, important to get an understanding. Bhakti Tirtha Swami helps us with that. So my saying to you, Krishna loves you, he wants you to come home. If you've been following the techniques, technologies presented here, and he gives scriptural references at times, you'll know that you're a pretty important personality. As long as you're in this material world, in a human body, you have a wonderful opportunity to know your true self, know your connection with God. So I remember, which book was that? We went into that whole thing of inferiority complex and feeling you're less or something. But this is why spiritual warriorship, to know who you are. And he keeps reminding you, an eternal spiritual being. Does that help? Krishna is always there for you. This is why the Maha Mantra chanting is so important. I went through that. I had this realization, 2 mornings ago. My mind started playing. I was chanting. And I can't quite remember what the mind was bringing in. But I remember what my response was. I guess it was a response rather than a reaction. I remembered that Lord Chaitanya and our scriptures say that the Maha Mantra, the holy name, is no different than Krishna himself. They are the same. And in that instant, whatever the mind was bringing in, and I'm sorry I can't give you the whole story, but I knew at that moment, oh no, right now as I'm chanting this holy name, Krishna himself is here. Now that's quite profound, and I always go through it when I try to think of that, but it calmed me down that whatever that mind was bringing in, if I keep chanting, Krishna is there hearing and knowing my heart and not my mind. So this is why we're fortunate to be, I'm saying, this lifetime in a human body. And those of you here on Krishna.com and hearing this and probably having read Srila Prabhupada's books, hopefully, and just given us so much to get out of this prison. Bhakti Tirtha Swami keeps reminding us we're in prison and we want to get out. And we've been given rules, regulations maybe to help us. And now he's expanding on that. This whole chapter is called How to Strengthen Ourselves so that we can be strong. Okay? So who was that asked that question? Manjesh, okay. You're a spiritual warrior now. You've been in training for a while. I've been hearing your name. Take what you're getting. put it into practice, one thing, two things, and live by it and watch the challenges. You can make this an experiment like a scientist. Huh? A scientist, you take one thing, you put something else, and then you see what happens, and then you get the outcome, and you write a paper, write a book, and you make lots of money. But you can be a scientist, take something you're hearing, and put it in your consciousness, and use it every day, apply it. And then see where dark challenges will come. Watch when the challenge comes. See it as a positive thing, as he told us. And then, seeing it as positive, know it's for you to grow. And then you ask, Lord, show me how I'm to learn and grow from this. And he, as we just said, protects you and is there for you, and you'll move right along. Okay? Any others? Okay. Who's that?
Messenger
Yes.
asks, what is the difference between devotional service and service that worldly people do?
Messenger? Where is he? In Canada?
Mm-hmm.
Somehow I feel I want to put that back on you to tell me, what do you think is the difference? How's that? Did he answer? She didn't get. Listen, Messenger. Devotional service means to serve the Supreme Lord for His pleasure. Because our constitutional position, our true self, is a servant. And that's who we serve. In the mundane world, in the material world, you're usually serving a boss or somebody for sense gratification, material something, which cannot nourish your soul to know who you really are. Okay? How is that, Messenger?
He says, I think the difference is that a worldly person concentrates on self or ego. That one who is a devotee serves out of love and does not think of self.
Messenger, thank you. Your answer is better than mine. Go ahead. Join me. Yeah, thank you. Beautiful. So you know what I just thought. You're like Arjuna. Arjuna asked those questions of Krishna, although he knew him himself. But he did it so others could hear. Very good, Messenger. I hope you are practicing serving, doing devotional service, and applying it every day. Thank you so much for that answer. Anything else? Anybody else?
Bhakti Carol says, last class you gave me an assignment to write, think why I was having problems with hurt. I gave it a lot of thought, even dreamed all night last night that I was thinking about it. Got some ideas, not completely solved, but understanding a little more than I did, I think. Thank you for the suggestion. Hey,
Bhakti and Carol, thank you for being there. Yes, you are truly moving ahead on this spiritual path and in spiritual warriorship. I remember your earlier questions way back. This is wonderful. And as you ask, so shall you receive. As you desire to change patterns, they will change if you use the techniques and technologies that we've been talking about. And as we've said, if you hear one technique or technology for higher consciousness, you write it down, and as you said, you meditate on it. And if this thinking is helping you clear out, what is it we just said here? Weeding out saboteurs to devotion. Very good. So you need to have, and sounds like you're having, what he calls an investigative attitude. And that's what you're doing now. And that's what is a tool for all spiritual warriors. And this way, this is wonderful, because if you remember what we said, subtle interferences can arise at any moment to pull us away from the path. But an investigative attitude, which it sounds like you're using now, enables us to see the patterns of the mind. It's all in the mind there, clearly, and weed out our destructive thoughts. So as you're meditating and what's coming up, write, Carol. I like writing, and journaling is very, very important, because then you're not trying to hold on to. And even if the mind brings up some old stuff from the past that may, I think I'm hurt by that. I remember how hurt I was. Put it on a piece of paper, write it in your journal, and at least it's out on paper and you can release it. That hurt can't be there anymore, but you're seeing it, and this is what's happening. You will need to get rid of that destructive thought, okay? And this way you can begin accomplishing, moving, advancing. Oh, Carol, I'm proud of you. Keep up the good work, and do stay in touch. And don't forget, if you feel you want to write more about it or say more, I told you I've given you permission. You can write me at motherindrani108@gmail.com. And I'd love to hear more in depth if you don't want to write it out on the chat room. Anyone out there. Anything else? Yes?
Sunil from Holland asks, Krishna consciousness develops only by chanting?
That's the question?
Yeah. Does Krishna consciousness only develop by chanting?
That's Sunil. Hi, Sunil. Welcome. What time is it in Holland right now? Because I'm just fascinated that you're there. I just tell folks, and I had the boo-boo on there from Holland. The Malgos. I gotta be careful I'm not just, getting proud of what's happening here. Trying to stay humble. But I'm curious as to what time it is there. And I'm gonna also turn this around as a question to you before I try to, because you'll probably answer your own question. What does Krishna consciousness mean to you? What was his question again?
It's 3 a.m. in the morning, Friday, for him. And his question is, does Krishna consciousness develop only by chanting?
Okay. What does Krishna consciousness mean to you? 3 o'clock in the morning. Krishna bless you. Can you answer my question a little bit? Is he answering?
Love for Sri Krishna.
How do you get that? How does that develop? Let me put it that way. The answer? Okay, Sunil, you know the process of devotional service as given? What's the first? Hearing, then chanting. It's amazing, then remembering. The more you hear about Krishna, the more you want to know about him and feel his love in your heart. Now the chanting, as Lord Chaitanya tells us, the chanting, Chaito Darpanam, what does that do? It clears the mirror of the heart. So if you're hearing, which is very important, and then you're chanting and cleansing the heart, that love will develop. But just from what we read tonight, along with that, what do you need to do? What was that? Impartial, investigative attitude. So as you're chanting and you're hearing and you're remembering, you want to make sure that you're clearing out any subtle interferences that may try to come up. And you want to weed out destructive thoughts. So you have to be vigilant of the mind. But you're right, the chanting is the way, and yet there's like more involved. But make sure you're hearing, because the more you're hearing about Krishna, then when you're chanting, if the mind tries to bring up destructive thought, you can remember something you heard about Krishna and replace that. Okay? How's that?
His question is, is chanting the most essential thing?
Is chanting the most essential thing? That's why Lord Chaitanya came over 500 years ago. Because the way our minds and consciousness have been polluted, if you will, and gone down through the years, way back. If you remember, I don't know if you were with us when I was doing Spiritual Warriors 6, chapter on the phenomenon of evil. And it was telling us through the different ages how, evil was separated and all was good and everybody was pretty spiritual and special. But as the time went by, we began to imbibe evil in ourselves. And the ceremonies, sacrifices all diminished. So yes, chanting is important for us. And yet, as we're doing it, we must be mindful that we are actually focusing on that holy name and knowing that there's no difference between that name and that. But see, we've also, in these human bodies, been around many times, millions and millions of lifetimes, and we've accumulated much in our deeper consciousness. And when we've been given this profound way of cleansing and purifying, it has to come up. And when it comes up sometimes, it's pretty rough. That's why I like the way Bhakti Tirtha Swami is giving us these tools, technologies, telling us, giving us what we may face and experience, and yet also reminding us that we have the Supreme Lord. As I said, those 12 qualities. Are you able to get any of Bhakti Tirtha Swami's books where you are in Holland? Or if not, if you can't buy it there, go to harinamapress.org and look through there and see. It's wonderful to reinforce your chanting and help in the purification that the chanting will bring about. How's that? Oh, it's 9 o'clock here. Is the answer?
We have some devotees here initiated by Bhakti Tirtha Swami.
In Holland? Oh, Holland. Patty, is that? Not Patty. Holland. Who's in Holland? Who's there? I know Holland. Holland. I know there was someone from Holland. Do you know them, Sunil? By name? Holland.
Yes.
Patty? Is it a Patty or a... Who is it? Get me excited.
Shameshwari Devidasi.
Parmeshwari?
Shameshwari.
Shameshwari. Oh, she's in Holland. Oh, she's a servant, isn't she? Oh my gosh. Her and her husband, right? Chalmeshwari. Oh, wonderful.
And Rude Baba Dasi.
Who?
Rude Baba.
Bhakti Tirtha Swami disciple? Listen, I tell you, Sunil, send those names to me because I've got the database. Are you a disciple of Bhakti Tirtha Swami? No. Sunil? Look at me, I'm all excited now. We connected. You bringing me God brothers, God sisters. What did he say?
No.
No. Okay. You wrote to me, emailed. Send me their names, and so I can check and see if they're on the database and get in touch with them. Okay? Thank you for being there. Thank you for being up at 3 a.m. talking on Krishna.com. And are there any other questions or comments before we close for the night? No? And who are we finishing with? Who's on? Or who's off? Everybody's gone?
Everyone's here.
Gone?
No, everyone's here.
Oh, okay. Anybody new came on? Okay, my dears, thank you for being there. Don't forget, any word, any phrase, or of what you heard tonight or in the past that you feel a response from your soul within or your heart, embody it. Make a commitment to practice it in your daily life and share it with someone else. And don't forget, as we said, there will be challenges, but they serve a purpose. Okay? And it means that Krishna is showing you his love and he wants you to get closer to him. Okay, Hare Krishna, thank you for being there. We look forward to meeting with you next week. Hare Krishna.